All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Left to Right podcast. Today we are joined by the leader of the Ontario Green Party, Mike Schreiner. Mike.
Hey, I'm good. I hope you're having a good day.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. So
Sure.
we'll start off with can you explain to our listeners what your thoughts were on the citizen-led referendum on private healthcare that just took place by the Ontario Health Coalition?
Yeah, I thought it was great that the Ontario Health Coalition gave the people of Ontario an opportunity to express their opinion for or against additional privatization in our healthcare system. I mean, the Ford government in the last provincial election, which was less than a year ago, like they never talked about privatizing healthcare, additional privatization. And so they don't have a mandate to do what they're doing to our healthcare system. And if you look at other jurisdictions in Canada, specifically Quebec, Alberta, and BC, additional privatization in the healthcare system has meant we pay more for less. And so I think giving Ontarians an opportunity to have their voice heard on this issue is really important. And I'm looking forward to hearing what the results of the referendum are tomorrow when the Ontario Health Coalition announces it at Queen's Park.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. I believe you voted no for Premier's Doug Ford's privatization of healthcare, but what was your reasoning?
Yeah, so my reason for voting against additional privatization in the healthcare system is that we'll actually pay more for less. If you look in Quebec, a colonoscopy at a private clinic costs 85% more than a colonoscopy at a public healthcare facility. You look at a carpal tunnel surgery, 2.5 times more expensive at a private clinic. You look at research that's coming out of Alberta that the private clinics charge more for the same procedures than the public clinics. So I think we're going to pay more for less care. And I'm also deeply concerned that the bill will, excuse me, that the bill will drain public health human resources out of the public system. So in particular, nurses and doctors and other frontline healthcare workers, instead of being in the public system, will move to the private system because they're dealing with less complex healthcare needs, likely will have better working conditions as a result of that. And that's actually going to put even more pressure on our public healthcare system. Also, we have a number of operating rooms in Ontario that are underutilized right now due to lack of staffing. So rather than paying to have new clinics built, why don't we just better utilize and more efficiently utilize our existing clinics? And then my final concern is that there is no guarantee or protection for patients that there will not be upselling. If you look at in British Columbia in particular, their Auditor General has reported that in many of these private clinics, you have upselling of procedures that then people are paying out of pocket. And our own Auditor General in the limited, private healthcare clinics we see in Ontario has seen a similar pattern. And so I think the public's going to pay more for less. And in some cases, the people of this province are going to be paying out of pocket for healthcare services. And I don't think that's what the people of Ontario want. I don't believe the Ford government has a mandate for that.
Okay. So why is Premier Ford's plan a threat to public healthcare workers if the legislation does indeed say that private clinics must have staffing models in place that won't detract from other facilities?
Yeah, well, so there is no guarantee that these private clinics are not going to poach frontline healthcare workers and doctors from the public healthcare system. You're already seeing some reports of that in Ottawa, where a clinic is opened within a public facility, but yet private, which is pretty strange. And so I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of community-based surgical clinics, provided that they're nonprofit and they're affiliated with a hospital. And that way, the hospital can manage the staff within the hospital itself and within the community-based surgical clinic. And so, that if you talk to, doctors, for example, the OMA, they'll tell you that, they would like to see community-based surgical clinics to help deal with the backlog, but they've been very clear that they should be nonprofit and affiliated with hospitals, precisely so we don't run into this issue of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers leaving the public system to operate in these private clinics, therefore making the public system less efficient and affordable.
Okay.
Okay, um, so if the results show support against private healthcare, will you take legislative actions to reflect the results?
Yeah, so if the Ontario Greens form government after the next election, we're committed to phasing out and closing down these private clinics. And so, word of caution to any investors who might be looking at opening these kinds of clinics. I mean, the bottom line for me is, and I say this as a small business owner, and I believe believe in the importance of business, of markets. I recognize that there is obviously a place for the for-profit sector in our society. I mean, I was a business person myself, but when it comes to healthcare, patient care should always have priority over shareholder profits. And I think moving to a for-profit shareholder capital model of healthcare delivery will mean higher bills for Ontarians and less care for patients. And I don't think that's what the people of this province want.
Okay. So that's all we'll talk about or discuss for the public-private healthcare referendum. But for the Greenbelt, can you share with our listeners your concerns over Bill 23, just so everyone can understand?
Yeah, well, I'm worried that Bill 23 is going to make the housing crisis worse because the cost of sprawl is so expensive. It costs 2.5 times more to service a home built through sprawl versus one built within an existing urban area. And, that kind of makes sense. I mean, think you got to do extra sewer lines, water main lines, roads, hydro lines. It's less efficient recycling and waste management collection. I mean, the list goes on and on. And then for people, it's actually forcing families into long, expensive commutes. I mean, we shouldn't be requiring, especially young people, to have to drive until they qualify for a mortgage, when it would be so much more affordable to build homes that people can actually afford in existing urban areas, in connected communities that people actually want to live in, close to where they work, close to where their friends and family are located, instead of imposing the high cost of sprawl on them. In addition to that, we simply can't pave over the farmland that feeds us and contributes $50 billion to Ontario's economy, nor can we afford to pave over the wetlands, forests, and green space that play a vital role in cleaning our drinking water and protecting us from climate-fueled extreme weather events, especially flooding. So the costs are just too high, especially when we've had numerous planning experts, we've had the government's own handpicked housing affordability task force and others clearly state that the lack of access to land is not causing the housing crisis. As a matter of fact, there's a study that came out recently showing that there's already enough green space land approved for development in the Greater Golden Horseshoe to build 2 million homes, which is 500,000 more homes than the goal that we all have of building 1.5 million homes. So this has nothing to do with addressing the housing affordability crisis, and has everything to do with a handful of wealthy, well-connected land speculators cashing in, and we're all going to pay the higher price in higher property taxes, long, expensive commutes, threats to our food and farming economy, and threats to our lives, livelihood, and property from extreme weather events.
So you introduced 3 bills before the last break aimed at fighting Premier Ford's plan to develop the Greenbelt. Yeah, are you able to break down those 3 pieces of legislation?
Yeah, well, I think the titles tell you all you need to know. So hands off the Greenbelt Act basically just says, we would not allow land swaps or allow land to be removed from the Greenbelt because it is vital ecological and farm land that is so important to our food security, our food economy, and protecting us from extreme weather events. I also introduced the No More Highways in the Greenbelt Act, which just says no more 400 series highways in the Greenbelt. We simply can't afford to pave over the farmland that feeds us, the green spaces that protect us. And then finally, no quarries in the Greenbelt, which just says, any new quarry application for a pit or quarry or an expansion of an existing pit or quarry in the Greenbelt, we'll just say no to that. And again, it's because this is such important, sensitive environmental lands that are vital to feeding us, vital to protecting us from extreme weather events, essential to cleaning our drinking water, and quite frankly, are important places for us to go with our family to access nature for our own mental and physical well-being. And they should be protected. The Greenbelt was designed in consultation with planning experts, academics, farmers, citizens groups, a whole variety of stakeholders. And it was designed in a way because these are important lands that are worth protecting.
Okay. And you mentioned the lost areas of like the green belt, for example. But why is the development of the green belt so dangerous if they've said they're going to make up for the lost land of the green belt by adding even more land to the green belt in other areas?
Well, to remove 7,400 acres of protected land from the Greenbelt and say, oh, we're going to add 9,400 acres of already protected land to the Greenbelt makes absolutely no sense. That's a net reduction of protected lands. And it's also just outrageous and just incomprehensible to suggest that prime farmland can somehow be moved to an urban river valley. Like when you pave over the Dauphin Rouge Agricultural Preserve, which is some of the best farmland in the entire country, that is 4,800 of the 7,400 acres. That farmland can't be moved to an urban river valley. You're not going to be able to farm the urban river valley. So it's just outrageous. The government would suggest in any way that that's comparable. And quite frankly, the government, from what I can see, they went out, they found some already protected lands in order to try to give them cover about what they are doing to pave over farmland, to destroy wetlands, to pave over forests, land that's vital to feeding us, land that's vital to protecting us, and to clean our drinking water.
Okay.
Okay, so will you introduce legislation at all to repeal Bill 23 or motion to call the government to repeal Bill 23? If so, when will we see that?
Yeah, well, in a sense, my Greenbelt bills pretty much would repeal the most egregious actions in Bill 23. As a matter of fact, the Hands Off the Greenbelt Act says no land swaps or land removals, and backdates it to prior to the introduction of Bill 23 and the associated regulations that led to the removal of land for the Greenbelt. I'm also deeply concerned about other aspects of Bill 23, and which is why I'm calling for the full repeal of the bill. And in particular, I'm concerned about the way in which the use of development charges is going to lead to property tax increases for municipal property taxpayers, which I want to be very clear. I'm not opposed to removing development charges for homes that are deeply affordable. What I am opposed to is the government changing the definition of what's affordable to 80% of market. So if it's $1 million home, and so at 80% it's $800,000, that's not affordable for most people, and the development charges shouldn't be removed from that. And so again, the government is going around saying, hey, we're removing development charges for quote affordable homes. But if the government's definition of affordability isn't actually affordable for people, you're just removing tax dollars from municipalities, and those tax dollars are vital to paying for the services that we need to build more homes. So a lot of municipalities are saying that this is actually going to make the housing crisis worse because we're not going to have the funds to build those water treatment plants, to run those sewer lines or water lines, to be able to service the homes that we desperately need in our communities. So the government's taking a number of actions through Bill 23. And if you want to talk about Bill 97, both of those bills are actually going to impose higher costs onto people and municipalities and likely make the housing crisis worse.
Okay. And what are your concerns for Bill 97 now that you mention it? Since it doesn't, from what I saw, it doesn't have like the same amount of like development on Greenbelt, or I don't think there's any as Bill 23. It's a little bit different. So what are concerns over that piece of legislation?
Yeah, well, Bill 97 essentially imposes sprawl on the entire province and threatens farmland all over Ontario, not just in the Greenbelt. So Bill 23 specifically threatens farmland in the Greenbelt. Bill 97 threatens farmland across the rest of the province. And that's exactly why, almost on an unprecedented level of unity among all the major farm organizations in opposing Bill 97, because it is a direct threat to agriculture all across the province. We've seen a number of rural municipalities now, Oxford County, Wellington County, many others, saying that Bill 97 could destroy the ability of farms to be viable within their counties, because it allows the severancing of farms, breaking them up for housing in a way that will make it extremely difficult to have connected agricultural lands to farm efficiently. Also likely to lead to conflict between, people who buy these homes and they're like, oh, we didn't know that the chicken barn or the hog barn smelled. Also, it will inflate the prices of agricultural lands, leading to more speculation in the farmland market, which will then make farmland unaffordable, especially for young and new farmers. And so that's why so many farm organizations have come out against Bill 97.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. That's Mike Schreiner, leader of the Ontario Green Party. Thank you for making the time.
Hey, my pleasure. And miss seeing the two of you as pages at Queen's Park, but good to know that you're staying active in Ontario politics.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye now.